Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are going to be talking about how to make a pretty cool, and sometimes some would argue excessive, button interaction. Now, I think everyone understands the importance of these micro interactions, but sometimes adding a little bit of flair to your button could make that process, where needed, much better for your user. And that could come in the form of adding to cart or checking out, anything that really allows me to understand that I made something like a good decision or I made like a really great decision. I want that to be reflected somehow in the UI or the experience in general. So what you can see here is I have a couple of different buttons set up. And I just want to kind of run through what happens when you prototype these types of micro interactions. So this is my simple button. So I have this kind of icon here of a cart, and I have the text that is centered. I'm going to just make sure it's 100%, and that is perfect. So it's centered to the middle of this button, which is currently 57 inches in height. That's totally fine. And then this button's going to be centered. It's hard to see that centering line. You can kind of see it faintly through the cart, just because the button's red. So I'm going to tighten this up a bit. We can tighten that up a bit more. Okay. And then there we go. That is center. So you can create any type of button you like. We're going to be working with a button, and we're going to make sure this cart animates in some sort of way. So there is our cart. We can just remove these. And first thing I really want to do is duplicate that and change the fill of this frame. So I'm going to press I, and I'm going to just grab this and delete that one. So what we have now is a very simple button. You can even, if you're interested, let's create another. State. So I created another state here, and what I want to do is I want to be able to hover, click, and then that releases. So let's take a look at what that would look like if we actually prototyped it. So what I did was, let's go back a bit. I have the duplicate, the exact same duplicate. I went onto my corner. Make sure you're in the design panel, so it's much more easier to work with. Shift and Option, and you can just bring that in. Goes any which way. If you hold Command at the same time, you're going to stop moving everything within. So I'm going to bring that in like that. That's a pretty drastic shrink, but we are going to show you what that looks like. So when I click on this button, actually when I hover on this button, so while I hover, that's what it's going to look like. We're going to do 300 milliseconds. So that is perfect. And then when I click on this button, perfect, it's going to actually give me this. And then after delay, so as you can tell, we are actually tightening up these timings ahead of time. So I can show you exactly what that looks like. So let's jump in there. So flow 3, here we go. So there's our hover state. Let's bring that up a bit. And there's our hover state. So that was kind of weird. Let's see what that looks like on a smaller scale. So remember when I said this was a drastic change? That's because it was. It's very small in comparison, and sometimes you don't want that much of a change. So I have it set to 55. And let's go back to our prototype. We can even tighten up that timing a bit, because right now I do have it set to 75, and what we want it set to, I think, is going to be 75, to be honest. It's just when this comes back up, maybe that's even shorter, like 75 as well. So let's see what that looks like. There we go. So we kind of have a little bit of an interaction going. So we have a hover and a click, and you don't need to actually create this whole shrunken version of it. You can do what works for you and what your design calls for. It doesn't always have to be like a literal change like that. So I just extended the width a bit. So just to fine tune this. There we go. So let's take a look at that scaled up just a bit. I'm gonna actually move this about there. Okay. So we have a clicking animation going, and we have an easy hover animation. So we're actually gonna take this to the next level in the next video, because what I want to do actually is when I click, I want this cart to like speed off and disappear, and then we'll kind of loop it somehow, but we'll have this cart like speed off like it's drag racing or racing into the distance, because that's what I think about when I'm thinking about carts in general when I'm in a store. I remember as a child using one of these carts and just running through the store with it like you were racing. So I want to kind of create the exact same thing for our little button here. And you can do this with anything. You can create your own button. It doesn't need to be a cart button. It could be something else. It could be like placing order button, and you can have like something pop out from the top and bounce. I would really love to see everyone come up with something a little different here, because there is a lot of room for some creativity. So let's move on to our next video where we're gonna make this a little bit more fun.